"Your brother gets sick every time he sees your face," my father said, standing in the doorway, with one hand still on the frame as if even entering my room disgusted him. "Pack your things tonight." My brother sat behind him on the sofa, pale but watching, silent in the glow of the television. Not weak, not dying, watching. The room suddenly sounded too loud. The ticking wall clock, the rattling fan, my own pulse hammering in my ears. I waited for someone to say it was anger speaking. A threat, a cruel joke. No one did. My father tossed an old duffel bag at my feet. "One bag," he said. "That's more than enough." I folded 2 shirts with steady hands, though my fingers had gone numb. My mother stood in the kitchen pretending to wash dishes, crying without turning around. No one stopped me when I walked out. The gate clicked shut behind me like a verdict. 15 days passed. No calls, no messages, no apology. Then the phone lit up. Dad. Then again. Then my brother. I let it ring. Because by then, sitting in a borrowed room with copies of documents spread across my table, I already knew something they didn't. The son they threw out had left quietly, but he had not left empty-handed. I was the older son, but never the favored one. My brother was fragile in the way some people learn to be, always protected, always believed, always placed at the center of every family decision. If he failed an exam, my father blamed stress. If I succeeded, it was treated as duty. That was the shape of our house. His weakness was precious. My strength was invisible. By 28, I was running most of my father's property paperwork, handling tenants, taxes, and disputes he barely understood. He introduced me to outsiders as the dependable one. But inside the family, I was the one expected to absorb insult quietly. If money was missing, suspicion drifted toward me. If my brother lashed out, I was told to be mature. I learned early that being useful is not the same as being valued. The night I was thrown out did not begin the betrayal. It only exposed it. What my father called my brother's illness was often rage dressed as vulnerability. He resented that I knew where the debts were hidden, which land was mortgaged, which signatures were forged. I had covered mistakes no one thanked me for. They mistook silence for weakness. That was their habit. Underestimate the person carrying the weight. And that habit would become the crack everything later broke through. The weeks before I was thrown out were full of quiet humiliations, the kind designed to leave no witness. At dinner, my father would ask my brother's opinion on matters I had already handled, then nod as if hearing wisdom for the first time. When I spoke, he answered with distracted silence, tapping his spoon against a plate, never lifting his eyes. My brother had a way of smiling without warmth. If relatives visited, he would joke that I was good with papers, not people, and everyone laughed just long enough for the insult to settle. Once I found property files I had organized disturbed, pages missing, signatures clipped out. My brother stood in the doorway watching me search and said softly, "You worry too much." Then he walked away. Small things kept accumulating. Locks in the house changed without explanation. Family conversations stopped when I entered a room. My father began asking for copies of documents I had already given him, as if testing whether I was hiding something. Even the pauses carried meaning. A glance exchanged between father and son. A lowered voice when I approached. A chair left empty at the table, though no one asked where I would sit. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, but betrayal rarely arrives with thunder. Sometimes it enters like dust through a cracked window, until one day you realize the whole house has changed color. The turning point came 3 days before I was expelled. My father asked me to bring the property ledgers to his study. My brother was already there, leaning back in my father's chair, flipping through pages as though he owned what generations had built. I noticed a transfer form on the desk, one parcel of land, our most valuable piece, being moved under my brother's sole authority. My signature was on it, a perfect copy. For a long second, no one spoke. I heard only the ceiling fan turning. Then my father said too casually, "We're simplifying things." Simplifying. That was the word he used for erasing me. I understood in that moment the accusation, the coldness, even the story about my brother becoming sick at the sight of me. It was not emotion. It was preparation. Push me out, make me look unstable, move the assets and leave me with nothing. I did not confront them. That surprised even me. I simply looked at the forged document, memorized every detail, and said, "I understand." And I did. That night after everyone slept, I returned to the study, copied records, photographed ledgers, and took certified duplicates of every document tied to debt, ownership, and the forged transfer. I stopped trying to be accepted. I started preparing to survive. Being thrown out days later did not ruin my plan. It confirmed it. Exile gave me something the house never had: clarity. I rented a narrow room above a mechanic's shop and treated it like an operations desk. Every paper I had copied was sorted by date: parcel number, tax record, and signature trail. Years of managing my father's affairs had taught me where fraud hides. In rushed transfers, unpaid liens, missing witness stamps, I knew the system because I had been the one keeping it running. I began quietly. First, I met an old registrar clerk who still respected my work and asked for certified extracts of ownership histories. Then I consulted a property lawyer, not to start a war, but to verify what could be challenged. His answer was simple: forged authorization, concealed debt exposure, and improper transfer procedure could unravel everything. That was enough. I made no threats. I sent no accusations. Instead, I froze my emotions and moved through process. I filed objections where deadlines mattered, submitted evidence where records could not be altered, flagged debts tied to land my brother thought was already his. Then I did something more important. I waited. Because reckless revenge seeks impact. Quiet revenge waits for timing. When my father and brother began calling after 15 days, I knew why. Notices had started reaching them. Banks were asking questions. Transfer approval had stalled. For the first time, they were reacting, and I was no longer the son defending himself. I was the one holding the paperwork. The payoff came without confrontation. I was sitting by the window of that rented room when my father appeared downstairs, looking older than 15 days should allow. He climbed the stairs slowly, carrying none of the authority he had used when he threw me out. He did not begin with apology. He began with panic. The land transfer had been suspended. A debt investigation had exposed properties leveraged against loans my brother never knew existed, because I had filed objections first. Nothing could be sold, moved, or concealed without review. My father asked what I had done. I told him, nothing you didn't force me to. His hands trembled when he realized the damage was not caused by revenge, but by truth surfacing. Days later, my brother called, his voice stripped of arrogance. He wanted me to withdraw the filings quietly, said it was a misunderstanding. I let the silence answer first. Then I refused. The consequences unfolded on their own. Relatives who once laughed at me began calling for explanations. The forged signature was examined. Family friends who had treated my brother as heir started keeping distance. Even the people who sided with my father understood one fact. The son expelled, with one bag had been the one, holding the family structure together. I did not raise my voice once. I only released facts, and watching them collapse under the weight of their own scheme was more satisfying than any dramatic revenge could have been. Silence had done what anger never could. Fallout did not arrive in one explosion. It spread quietly, through reputation first. Relatives who once avoided my calls began speaking in lowered voices around my father. Some defended him out of habit, but most were disturbed by the forged documents, and even more by the fact he had thrown out the son who had protected the family records. Sympathy shifted without announcement. That is how power often moves, silently. My brother changed the most. I heard he stopped appearing at gatherings. Unable to meet questions he once mocked me for raising. His confidence had depended on being believed. Once doubt entered, it hollowed him. My father called for reconciliation, but not as a father, as a man trying to contain damage. That difference mattered. The real stakes were never only property. It was trust, identity, and the cost of allowing yourself to be treated as disposable. For years, I had confused endurance with loyalty. Losing the house forced me to recover self-respect. And that is why this should matter to anyone listening. Because betrayal rarely starts with dramatic cruelty. It starts when small humiliations are normalized. When your work is used but your worth denied. If you ignore those signs, you may lose more than money. You may lose yourself. But if you document truth, stay calm and act with precision. Even the people who erase you can be made to face what they built. And that reckoning changes everyone. In the months that followed, I stopped measuring victory by what my father lost. I began measuring it by what I recovered. Peace returned slowly. I found work consulting on property disputes, using the same skills once dismissed inside my own home. People paid for the judgment my family had taken for granted. There was irony in that, but also healing. My father still called sometimes. I answered once. We spoke without accusation, almost like strangers remembering a shared past. I understood then forgiveness is not always reunion. Sometimes it is simply refusing to carry poison forward. My brother never apologized. I stopped needing one. That may have been the deepest revenge of all. The future no longer revolved around reclaiming a house I was pushed out of. I built plans of my own, new investments, a quieter life, relationships chosen rather than inherited. Blood had taught me its limits. Distance taught me freedom. Looking back, being told to pack one bag felt like exile. It was actually release. They believed sending me away made me powerless. What it really did was remove me from the illusion that I had to earn love through sacrifice. I walked out carrying one bag. I walked forward carrying evidence, dignity, and a name I restored myself. Some doors close to punish you. Some close so you finally stop begging to be let in. And sometimes the man cast out at night becomes the one who learns dawn belonged to him all along.